It is quite a big day today in Brussels, and that is where we begin tonight, Brexit. The negotiations with arguably the lowest expectations of all time. UK Prime Minister Theresa May arrived back in Brussels today trying to win something she's been told repeatedly she cannot have, a change to the Irish backstop. Now, the morning started with this somewhat awkward handshake, if you can see that, between Mrs. May and Jean-Claude Juncker. She then spent the rest of the day meeting EU leaders who have spent the past fortnight insisting there won't be any changes to the withdrawal agreement. So, if Theresa May doesn't look like she's having fun, well, she probably isn't. At the end of the day, May and Juncker released a joint statement saying, quote, President Juncker underlined that the EU27 will not reopen the withdrawal agreement, which represents a carefully balanced compromise between the European Union and the UK, in which both sides have made significant concessions to arrive at a deal. Well, the EU leaders held a united front today and stayed on message that the withdrawal agreement was not open for renegotiation, something they said already before. And here's what they had to say.
We are weeks from an economic and human catastrophe. This is the reality of a no-deal Brexit. Should be a very dangerous solution, a no-deal Brexit.
Mrs. May today in the meeting assured us that there will be a backstop. That what she said already in Belfast, there is no question to remove the backstop. Because that is absolutely necessary for securing and safeguarding the Good Friday Agreement, safeguarding the internal market and safeguarding also the peace process.
Okay, look, it's not like we heard anything new today from everyone who had spoken. Why is she even here? What was she expecting to get by being here?
Well, I think it's about sending the message that the withdrawal deal, as it stands at the moment, isn't going to get through the British Parliament. There needs to be changes to it. Otherwise, the Prime Minister hasn't got an option to get MPs on board back home. And I think it's just to start that process after it got broken, really, with the vote in Parliament a week ago.
And we heard, although that there is a possibility, Jean-Claude Juncker was suggesting to add wording to the political agreement. Is that enough, or should the EU have done a bit more just to get this through the British Parliament?
Well, look, the moment of truth is coming, from my viewpoint, because now it's clear that for UK it's not possible to leave the European Union and to avoid a border in Ireland. This is impossible to have the two things together. And so we need to find a way out. We saw that even the British Parliament understands that no-deal Brexit will be extremely dangerous, so nobody wants this, from the British side and from the European side. So what is left? And I think that a new solution is coming up now, which should be to consider the possibility of a customs union. Because if the UK is in a customs union, then it is possible to avoid a border in Ireland.
That's not going to get through, isn't it? I mean, this idea that...
Well, I mean, you know, people would say if Theresa May was genuinely acting in the national interest, rather than her own red line about a customs union, which, of course, the British public did not vote on whether Britain should stay inside the EU's customs union or not. They were asked whether they wanted to leave the European Union. And you can be in the customs union and not in the European Union. Sure. It is clearly what Labour wants. It would get through Parliament. That's the bottom line. But today, Tessa, was, you know, I was saying it's a performance. And if politics is about a performance, this is a theatre performance that would be on the West End or in Broadway. But that is in some ways all it was. And we're part players in all of this because ultimately she didn't come here with any new ideas, new plans, new ways to get through the backstop. All she did was state it has to change.
Right.
We know it has to change, or we know that you want it to change, because you've been saying that, as of many of your own MPs, for weeks, if not months.
I mean, you said that she came here with a message, and yeah, she delivered that message. If we're talking about messaging, who is actually winning the narrative here where it comes to Brexit? Who's standing firm? Who's going to get their way? Who's winning the messaging war?
Well, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I mean, if you're looking at winners and losers, that's why we're in the situation we're in at the moment. I think we've got to get past that and try and find out what is mutually beneficial for both sides. Can I just touch the customs union issue as well? Because I disagree with Darren on that. What people don't realise with the customs union is that if you're in the customs union but outside the EU, you lose access to all the EU trade deals. It means for the UK an EU-only trade policy, no possibility of any trade, not only any trade deals, but even benefiting from the EU trade deals if you're outside of the EU but inside the customs union.
Well,
so
I mean,
if you have
Liam
a
Fox
customer,
hasn't
you
made
need a
great.
different one.
Liam Fox hasn't made great progress thus far on trying to get the UK's only trade deals. So
No, but the problem-
but it would get round. I mean, it wouldn't solve the Irish border issue because it's not. But it would help enormously. But the reason I brought it up, or the reason it was brought up, I think, is because it would get through. Even though there are downsides, it would get through Parliament. It would get. There are enough Conservative MPs, along with opposition MPs. It would get through Parliament.
It's the fear of being stuck in the customs union, which is why the backstop is
Maria,
stalled in Parliament.
You seem to be the most optimistic here in this group, that something is going to
I'm
come
almost trying
out
to
of
find a
this.
solution.
Because everyone was thinking that nothing is going to come out of this. No, really, you are optimistic that something actually could come out of this. Concrete.
Well, you know, the
50 days to go.
The history is Europe is full of this kind of stories. Sometimes we feel that things are completely blocked. We are in a stalemate, and then all of a sudden, we understand there is another solution, which is coming, and the strong and
So
strong,
is that the
strong
strategy?
arguments.
Is that the strategy?
Because
Just
look,
bring it to
we
the end?
try everything. First, we saw that hard Brexit is extremely dangerous. Nobody wants this. Then the possibilities of elections are not easy to put in motion. So what is left? And that's why we need to have a serious discussion about the pros and cons of customs union, with a stronger partnership with the European Union, with the possibility to benefit from this customs union.
Right.
And I think also with benefits for British population, because
the one thing
European standards are
last
better.
point.
Yeah, the one thing we did learn today is that the talks are going to start again. So for
Or continue.
Well, for the first time since the withdrawal agreement
Okay.
was signed, on Monday, the Brexit Secretary, the UK Brexit Secretary, is going to come and talk to Michel Barnier.
All right. Well, now let's. Everyone is getting rather hot under the collar, and this also happened yesterday because there were fiery comments from Donald Tusk. Then the fallout continues with all the reaction. Let's take a look. This, the moment Brexit negotiations appear to break down.
I've been wondering what that special place in hell looks like for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it safely.
The President of the European Council and the Irish Prime Minister are all smiles as they await the reaction of Brexiteers.
I don't recall, sir, any president insulting members of this House, members of the government and the British people in such a way.
Well, Mr. Speaker, sometimes the truth hurts, doesn't it?
Across the Irish Sea, DUP leader Arlene Foster was less than impressed.
I think it was deliberately provocative, I have to say.
And not to be outdone, Nigel Farage also fired back at Donald Tusk. After Brexit, we will be free of unelected, arrogant bullies like you and run our own country. Sounds more like heaven to me. Back in Brussels, Guy Verhofstadt doubled down. I doubt Lucifer would welcome them, the Brexiteers, as after what they did to Britain, they would even manage to divide hell, he exclaimed. Meanwhile, Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker gave this candid assessment of the state of negotiations.
I'm doing my job here. It's a hell.
But not before he grabbed some headlines of his own. While meeting with the Irish Prime Minister, the pair posed with an oversized card apparently sent from a grateful Irish family to the Commission. It seems breaking up is hard to do. Well, joining us for this part of the panel is Matt Hind. He's Vice President of Fleischmann Hillard. And still with us, Dan Dalton, an MEP with the ECR Group, and Darren McCaffrey, our political editor. But first of all, all those reactions to what Donald Tusk had said yesterday, did he, the other part of it is, did he just actually say what everyone else was thinking? Maybe he was just being honest, really?
Pretty much. I mean, I think it looks like this is just genuine frustration. But at the same time, he also managed to say something that united the UK. Leavers became righteously angry about it. Remainers agreed with him. And actually, the more interesting thing is, what else did he say?
And Matt, you used to be a negotiator. Theresa, we were talking about Theresa May being here. What is the strategy behind Theresa May being here, if there is one?
As much as anything, I think it's just showing exactly what a difficult position she is in Parliament. She lost by 230 votes. OK, she's brought it back with the Brady Amendment. It's saying to the European Union that something has to happen. Now, whether that's enough, her major issue is that she needs to construct a stable majority for an agreement. At the moment, she's gone towards the ERG and the DUP, perhaps with a few Labour leavers on that side. is that stable? It's not just for the meaningful vote. It's for the entire legislative process after that. I mean, a lot of people think actually she needs to reach out much more extensively across the aisle and bring a more stable coalition with the Labour Party. But that only happens if the Labour leadership moves in that direction.
And also, if she gets a lot of the concessions that she wanted from here, we were talking about the political agreement, whether wordings would actually be enough. If that changed and she can bring that back and get an agreement, is that enough?
It remains to be seen. I mean, the problem is, I think, as Matt mentioned, there are two paths to a majority. One is with the Conservative Party and the DUP, which is going to be difficult to unite the parliamentary party. The other one is to try and look across the aisle towards Labour votes. But to be honest, that is going to be immensely tricky for the Conservative Party. And you can't necessarily guarantee that the Labour Party is going to vote together either, given the fact that their leader is out of sync with a lot of their membership.
No, I mean, Theresa May has repeatedly tried to go down this route of appealing to Brexiteers in the ERG group and the DUP. First of all, I mean, it's a slender, slim majority, even at the best of times. I mean, and understandably so, but she has acted in her party's interest in that case, rather than a genuinely concerted. Well, you know, deciding, for example, to have cross-party talks and then say, we'll have cross-party talks, but I'm not moving on any of the positions I currently have, is not a way to have cross-party talks. So if she really wanted a deal where she was willing to compromise, she might get a breakthrough. But at the moment, she's not willing to do that because she thinks it'll destroy the Conservative Party.
Yeah. And of course, the Labour Party's position that came out last night has not proved particularly popular with a substantial part of the Labour Party. I mean, there has been quite a violent reaction to the Labour Party position around a customs union and a single market relationship.
No, just to bring up a point that Darren had brought up in the past, her strategy could be just to wait till the time runs out, and then that's where you can actually get results. Is that a viable strategy for her at this point?
It might work, but you're playing with fire, frankly. I mean, if no-deal Brexit is as bad as everyone thinks it's going to be, that puts a lot of risk into a final decision that some of the Labour Party will split from the leadership. I mean, in the end, the Labour leadership doesn't particularly want to be associated with Brexit, as much as some of them may probably support it. They don't want to be associated with a Tory Brexit. So do you get to the stage at the end of March where can they encourage 50 or 60 Labour MPs to support the Prime Minister whilst keeping their fingerprints off the final deal? Who knows?
Can I just bring up this issue, because I don't quite understand it myself, so I'm exploring it, which is that there's going to be a vote next Thursday in the UK Parliament now on the withdrawal deal. That was confirmed today by Andrea Leadsom. I mean, I think almost certainly, unless there's a miracle, in the next week, she will lose that. But the more important vote next week may well, because she promised this as well, be on no deal. Now, as
whether to rule that out.
It's only indicative, it's not legally binding on the government. But if the UK Parliament essentially says, we are ruling out no deal, where does that then leave the negotiations? Because that trump card is kind of taken away.
No, that is a good question. If they do have that vote, actually, because you say it's not legally binding, but she will call for it. All right. So we will have, will anything happen that happened here, if anything does come out of Brussels today, change the mood, the music in London, which is what we've been talking about. And joining us now from Westminster to tell us what is going on that side is your news correspondent, Tig Enright. Tig, let's start with the Labour Party and some demands, that put forward by Jeremy Corbyn to Theresa May.
Yeah, a very controversial move by Jeremy Corbyn. We're told he's written a letter to Theresa May in which he sets out a shopping list of concessions, which, if filled, he says he would whip his MPs to fold in behind her withdrawal agreement. But would it actually be her withdrawal agreement? Because top of his list is that Britain stays in a customs union with the EU. And, of course, that is a blood red line for Theresa May, because it's something that the hard Brexit faction of her party would never get on board with. But he also managed to absolutely infuriate a huge swathe of his backbenchers, because, of course, they know that the vast majority of that part of the Labour Party's members are calling for a second referendum. There was no mention of that in his letter to Theresa May today, and in reality, he has given no indication one way or the other as to whether he will be pushing for that as a solution to this logjam.
Tig, it's not very optimistic on this side, at least the opinion of people. What about there? Is there any cause for optimism for Theresa May over there?
I can't say that there is, Tessa, because, of course, she went to Brussels today with a list of objectives that she had in the final days of the negotiations for the withdrawal agreement. It was a no then, and it's a no now, and it doesn't feel like we are any further along to a solution. Let me bring in a guest. Philip Lee is a former minister in Theresa May's cabinet who resigned last summer over the direction that she was taking with Brexit. He's now the chairman of the Right to Vote campaign. Philip, are we any closer, any farther along the road to a solution?
It doesn't appear so. I don't think anything has changed. I think the last set of votes were just an exercise in displacement activity. Now, here we are. There's no change to the withdrawal agreement. Presumably that means that the colleagues who voted against the deal last time round will vote against it again, which means let's get on with having this vote. Time is of the essence here, and I would very much like to get to a solution.
When it comes to it, do you see those hard Brexiteers and the European Research Group actually allowing this dreaded Irish backstop stand in the way of Brexit actually being fulfilled?
I think I can't see the DUP changing its position. It's quite clear about what its position is, and I cannot see how members of the ERG can honestly say that anything has changed. If they move now, it says a lot about how they do their politics. They were against it last time round. Presumably they're going to be against it this time round.
What do you make of what we heard out of Labour today and this potential to reach across the aisle to find a way out of this situation?
I don't think it was anything more than had previously been stated. I mean, Keir Starmer, the shadow Brexit secretary, has come out and said that it doesn't rule out a second referendum. Essentially, what I think Jeremy Corbyn has done is owned a soft Brexit solution. It's now Jeremy Corbyn's soft Brexit solution. It cannot be a Conservative one, and I don't quite see how a Conservative Prime Minister can embrace that.
Philip Lee, thank you very much for joining us today. There is a cynical perspective in all this, that Theresa May continues to try and wind down the clock so that it ratchets up the pressure on those hard Brexiteers to fall in behind her deal. Philip told me just before we came on the air there that he doesn't see it as cynical, he sees it as the truth.
Right, thank you for that, Tig Enright there talking to us from London. I think one question we'd like to, as we were talking about it earlier, is that what's the point of having that vote if Theresa May goes back to London and will get the same answer anyway from Parliament? What is the point of having that meaningful vote?
Well, I guess the point is to reinforce the message here that the deal isn't going to go through as it is, so she needs some concessions. I would imagine that's the intention.
That is the intention. All right. OK. Still no change on that front. All right. A lot more coming up on Raw Politics for you. France is recalling its ambassador from Rome after claiming to be the target of the worst attacks from Italy since World War II. Plus, could school-skipping students end up swaying the European elections? Why some politicians are listening to young climate change protesters. That's coming up next.